Take two and action. All right, so what we're doing today, sheet 7, okay? Make sure you always, now this is something you wouldn't have to do if you're building a car in, because you would have already have done to clean the cylinder routine out thoroughly. But always double check if there's nothing gross or disgusting either on your cylinder, pistons, which by the way should be brand new, so it shouldn't be a problem, or in your cylinders, which again, should be brand clean, okay? So make sure that you just double check that before you start. Don't put dirt in your engine when you first start it up. It's ridiculous, or ever, really. Now, we are going to line up our compression rings. We are not going to line them up thusly. Let me show you. I don't think it takes a rocket surgeon to see that if I line my rings up like so, even when they're compressed, it gives a path right through there for the compression to escape. So what I want to do, I want to rotate them around. Now, these bottom ones, the oil control rings, as you know, they don't really hold much in the way of compression. So I don't get too concerned, like there's a gap right there. See the other, oh, there's a gap right there. So I don't get really concerned about what the oil control rings are doing, but I do really pay attention to where are my compression rings. So here's one of the gaps right here. There's one there. As long as they're not right on top of one another, I'm pretty happy. Typically, it's nice if you have two rings, you know, 180, 120, something like that. You know, you don't need to get all, oh, it must be exactly 180. What they must not be is lined up. Okay, they must not be lined up. So take your fingers, got some clean oil here, lube up the cylinder, particularly the top inch, inch and a half or so. Don't get carried away, because what's going to happen in a minute, we're going to dip our piston in some clean oil too. Make sure that oil gets behind the rings good. And then we're going to drop it in. Now the oil control ring will smear that oil all the way down, so you don't have to worry about getting all the way into the cylinder. Now, note that we colored our ring, or rather our rod on the side that we can see, so obviously that goes that way. But when in doubt, the connecting rod bolts always face towards the valves and the cam, always. Now, that will never go in because the rings stick out too far. I'm well aware of that, ma'am, sir. So what we're going to use is what's called a compressing tool, a ring compressor tool. We're just going to squish it down like this, and it's going to squish down on those rings tightly. Now, here's a pro tip. Okay, you take this to the bank. All right, now, what's going to happen is this. On this style, you hippie. On this style, okay, they tend to want to loosen up. So when we go to put the ring and the piston in a minute, they tend to want to loosen. So here's this tip. If there's ever a side where this band is closer to the bottom, that's the side that you want to have towards the block, because that helps hold it tighter. Now take yourself a hammer handle, hold this so that you're kind of pushing that way on this handle here to tighten it up, and you're kind of steadying it with the other hand. First time, every time. No, first time, it works 60% of the time, it works every time. All right, there it goes. Now what that does, of course, is those rings are supposed to fit the cylinder tight. I mean, duh. But they actually stick out past the cylinder. So what this does, this effectively creates a region above the cylinder that's the same dimension or a little smaller than the cylinder. So then what you're doing is you're driving that down in there. They go from up in here down into there, and as soon as they get in there, they can expand out, obviously, and fit tight in the cylinder. Now, there are several styles of these. This is the most common. Mr. Grimm is going to clean his hands up and show you the other style momentarily. Rule number 1, do not touch your clean computer, okay, with your dirty hands. So, align the rings so that the ring end gaps are 20 degrees apart. Okay, that's assuming, okay, that you have a single oil control ring, okay? Again, oil control rings don't really hold any compression, not a huge deal for us, okay? the top two rings must not be lined up. Okay, so that's a big deal. Now, note, we lubed it with cylinder oil. We did that. We dipped the head in. Sweet, we did that too. Okay, there we have it. Yay. Okay, now, here's the deal. If you try to push that with your fingers, it ain't going to work. A little tappy with a handle of a hammer is the way to go. Okay, it's pretty easy to do. If your rings were upside down or the wrong position, okay, well, the top ring and the second ring are not the same size. If you put them in the wrong size, for instance, put a bigger one in a smaller ring land, they could hang up. If you put a smaller one in a bigger ring land, it would actually lose compression. Okay, you want them in the same ring lands they came out of, and you want them to fit nice and tight and perfect. Period. What would happen if the ring gaps were all lined up? Well, we talked about that. You're going to be losing compression. So this is sheet 7. That was it. Before you come to class next time, I will have sheet 7 finished for all of your computers, for all of your engines, and we can jump straight into sheet 8. Okay? So that is the game. One thing I noticed that I did mess up is I didn't take the rod off of this thing. Okay? Probably would have been easier if I had taken that rod cap off, all right, before I dropped it in there. But I'm going to roll with it, so I don't care. All right, cool. Oh, I was going to show you the other kind of ring compressor. Duh. All right. Piston ring compressor. Bam. All right, so there are, as I said, this is the most common style. This kind here isn't as bad for automotives. It has a little bit of a lock to help hold it on tight. Notice that this one, all have one of them right at the bottom. This is the one that should be, this is the bottom side of the tool. Do not try to do it with this side down, because as you push them this way, the rings, there's not as much clamping force and they'll kind of pop out. Don't do that. This kind here is okay. I kind of like it, sort of. This pair of pliers, this thing wraps around and compresses it when you squeeze the plier handles. It's okay. It's whatever. These things here are the coolest thing ever. OMG gosh. However, you have to have one for every engine that you own, ever work on, ever think about working on, period. Because this one is made for a 3.780 inch bore, period. But Mr. Groom, mine's a 3.8. Sorry, friend, you got to buy a new one. Okay, and they're kind of pricey. However, this is a tapered deal. As the piston goes into the top of it, it's fatter at the top, and at the bottom, it is basically as tight as it would be if you had compressed the rings with our other tool over here. You're going to take your hammer handle and you're going to drive the piston down, boom, through this thing. This thing is slicker than snot in a greased doorknob. Slicker than an eel in a bucket of snot. Holy cow, it's the slickest thing ever, friend. Okay. However, again, for most of us, probably not the most not user friendly. It is the most user friendly. It's probably not the most desirable one to use, because most of us are not going to build that many engines in our lives. Okay, so like if you were you're like, I'm a big 350 Chevy guy, Mr. Groom. Cool. Then go down and buy one. Oh, problem. Don't 350s, Mr. Groom, have just a 4-inch bore? Yes, but the one you're working on today has a 4-inch 30 thousandths bore because it's been bored out. Ooh, sorry, you're going to need to get another one. Well, this one's 4 inches 60 thousandths. Ooh, that's going to be another one. Okay. So, although these are kind of a pain in the buttocks, this style here, the nice thing about them is that they work on every engine. That is, that has anywhere from a 2-inch to a 5-inch bore. Okay, so that's kind of a neat deal. Okay, 5 inches, isn't that almost big enough to do a diesel engine one? Yes, it is. The diesel ones will typically be a little bit more like this guy here, where they'll have a few more bands on them. That's because they're so big, and some of their they have quite a few more compression rings, so you need to have it quite a bit wider to grip all of them, and they're going to be a little tougher, and so typically the diesel ones are made a little heavier duty. Okay, but again, you know, your 350 Chevys, your 351 Fords, you know, your big block Chevys, all have, you know, well, big block is what, 4 1/4, I think, bore. So that's a pretty good sized bore. If you bore that out, let's say 4.4 or something inches, that's a big bore, okay? But that would handle it. So again, cool. Go buy one of these. Buy them pretty much anywhere. And what does this one say for price? Oh, it doesn't say. It's just going to get you an idea of them. These ones are always cheaper. Always, 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 always. And yet, C1760. See that? And it works for everything. This one here is kind of spendy. It works for a lot of them. And like this one, this top one here maybe works for anywhere from like 4¼ inches down to 4 inches or something, kind of a deal, right? It works on a sliding scale of things. This one here, although they're the coolest things ever, are very expensive and they only work for one bore size. And that kind of sucks. Okay? Alrighty, I'm done yabbering. Bye.